So for decades, I mean, we've basically been told that the secret to longevity is locked inside, high-tech labs.
Right, synthesized into expensive supplements or whatever.
Exactly. Or like achieved through these grueling hours in specialized anti-aging clinics. We're totally conditioned to believe that preserving our physical independence requires this complicated, hyper-modern solution.
Yeah, that's a huge misconception.
Right. But what if the clinical data from the last 30 years suggests your best defense against age-related muscle loss is actually, well, currently sitting in your fridge, just quietly wrapped in wax paper?
I mean, the irony of modern nutritional science is that we often spend millions of dollars trying to reverse engineer physiological benefits that traditional food cultures perfected centuries ago.
Yeah, totally.
The biochemistry we're looking for is already on the grocery store shelf.
Welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are analyzing the clinical archives of Dr. Thomas Reed, a specialist with, nearly 3 decades of experience helping older adults recover their physical strength and mobility.
And his research points to a strategy that feels almost too accessible to be true.
Yeah, we are going to decode how 3 specific everyday cheeses can actively fight sarcopenia.
Right, so sarcopenia is the medical term for the progressive loss of skeletal muscle mass and function. It typically accelerates after we turn 65.
Which a lot of people just accept as normal aging, right?
Exactly. But the critical framing here is that sarcopenia is not merely the inevitable ticking of the biological clock. It's a mechanical failure in the body's muscle rebuilding machinery.
And it can be biochemically reversed.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for anyone listening who wants to maintain their own physical independence or, maybe help aging parents maintain theirs, we are not talking about eating an afternoon snack here.
No, not at all.
We're talking about deploying natural, highly specific tools for structural repair. But before we hit the cheese aisle, I feel like we need to understand the failure point. Why do muscles just stop maintaining themselves as we get older?
Well, the phenomenon is actually called anabolic resistance. When you're 20, your muscles are highly sensitive to amino acids.
Like they just soak them right up?
Exactly. You eat a moderate amount of protein and your body eagerly synthesizes it into new muscle tissue. But as we age, that sensitivity blunts. The muscles become stubborn.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they essentially ignore the metabolic signals that tell them to grow and repair. So Dr. Reed's clinical focus is really on overriding that resistance.
So if you introduce the right biochemical building blocks in very specific formats,
you can force that synthesis machinery to turn back on, regardless of your chronological age.
Wow. Okay, well, that brings us to our first foundational tool, which, I have to admit, feels like a relic from a 1980s diet fad.
Cottage cheese.
Yes, we are starting with cottage cheese. I mean, sitting next to a grapefruit on a diner menu, it really doesn't scream clinical muscle therapy,
Right, it has a bit of a PR problem.
Totally. But looking at Dr. Reed's macronutrient breakdown, the mathematical efficiency is just hard to ignore. Half a cup of low-fat cottage cheese delivers 14 grams of complete protein for only 81 calories.
What's fascinating here is the sheer density of that ratio. Almost 70% of the calories in cottage cheese come directly from protein.
That's massive.
It is. Compare that to, like, a standard cheddar, where only about 24% of the calories are protein and the rest is primarily fat.
Right, but the caloric efficiency is just the entry point, right? Like the true clinical value lies in something else.
Yeah, a specific branched chain amino acid called leucine.
Leucine, which is essentially the ignition switch for protein synthesis. I know it triggers the mTOR pathway.
Right, the cellular mechanism that signals the body to start building muscle.
Yeah. And because of that anabolic resistance you mentioned, older adults need a much higher threshold of leucine to flip that switch.
Usually around 3 grams per meal.
And cottage cheese provides over a gram of leucine in just that half-cup serving.
Exactly. So you're delivering a massive concentrated dose of the exact molecular trigger the aging muscle requires, without demanding the digestive system process a massive volume of food.
But the immediate trigger is only half the battle, because Dr. Reed's notes spend a significant amount of time on what happens after the mTOR pathway is activated.
Right. He specifically highlights a protein called casein.
Yeah. So if leucine is the ignition switch, casein seems to be the fuel management system.
That's a great way to put it. Casein is basically a masterclass in biological pacing. When you consume cottage cheese, the casein proteins interact with your stomach acid to form a physical gel clot.
Wait, it forms a gel in your stomach?
Yeah, it literally coagulates, and this significantly slows down the rate of gastric emptying.
Oh, wow. So instead of a massive spike of amino acids entering the bloodstream all at once,
Your body receives a steady, continuous microdrip over a period of 6 to 8 hours.
which perfectly solves the vulnerability of the overnight fast.
Exactly.
Because when you're sleeping for 8 hours, you obviously aren't eating. And if the body needs amino acids for baseline cellular repair during the night, and there's nothing in the digestive tract, it will literally cannibalize its own skeletal muscle to get those materials.
And that nocturnal muscle breakdown is a primary driver of sarcopenia.
That's wild.
Yeah. Dr. Reed cites a comprehensive longitudinal study involving nearly 1,000 elderly participants. The researchers measured lean mass retention over a 12-week period, isolating nighttime feeding habits.
And what did they find?
The participants who incorporated a slow-digesting casein source, like cottage cheese, shortly before bed or immediately upon waking after that long fast, showed statistically significant preservation of lean mass compared to control groups.
So the casein acts as an 8-hour biological shield.
Precisely.
So for you listening, cottage cheese is your time-release protector. It secures the overnight fasting window. And it's also soft and incredibly easy to chew, which removes a major friction point for anyone managing dental issues.
Which is very common.
Right. But biology isn't just about resting. We have to look at daytime efficiency too.
Yeah.
As people age, overall appetite often shrinks.
Yes, a large volume of food becomes intimidating or even uncomfortable.
Exactly. So we need a way to deliver a highly concentrated punch of nutrition without overwhelming the stomach.
And that requires transitioning from a slow release mechanism to a density mechanism. We need a food source where the biological labor of breakdown has already been completed before it ever reaches the human digestive tract.
Enter authentic Parmigiano Reggiano.
Yes.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because in most kitchens, Parmesan is treated as a garnish. Just a quick dusting over a bowl of pasta for aesthetics and saltiness.
Right, just a flavor enhancer.
Yeah, but Dr. Reed's data positions this as a pharmaceutical-grade nutritional dense pack. A single thumb-sized piece, so just 1 ounce, contains over 10 grams of complete protein.
It's incredible. And the secret to that concentration is the mandatory 24-month aging process.
Authentic Parmesan isn't just sitting in a cave developing flavor, is it?
No, not at all. It is undergoing active microscopic transformation. Lactic acid bacteria and naturally occurring rennet are systematically breaking down the long, complex polypeptide chains of the milk proteins into free amino acids and short peptides.
So the cheese is literally pre-digesting itself.
Predigestion is the exact clinical term, actually. The heavy lifting that would normally tax an older, less efficient gastrointestinal system has already been outsourced to the enzymes in the cheese wheel.
That is brilliant.
It is. And this is why many seniors who experience bloating, lethargy, or severe discomfort after eating a heavy steak can process an ounce of Parmesan with zero gastrointestinal distress. The proteins are already disassembled.
And doesn't that aging process also do something to the lactose?
Yes. That 2-year enzymatic process consumes virtually all the lactose, making it entirely viable for those who have developed age-related lactose intolerance.
That's such a huge win. And it's not just the protein density that makes this crucial. The source material pivots heavily into calcium here.
Oh, the calcium component is vital.
Right, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking calcium is purely structural, right? Just a mineral we need to keep our bones from getting brittle.
But it's actually the active signaling ion that physically allows muscle fibers to bind and contract.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the sliding filament theory of muscle contraction.
Okay, remind me how that works.
Well, within your muscle fibers, you have proteins called actin and myosin. For a muscle to contract, whether you're lifting a coffee mug or standing up from a chair, those proteins must grab onto each other and slide.
But the binding sites are naturally blocked.
Right. Calcium is the key that unlocks those binding sites. When your nervous system says move, calcium floods the muscle fiber, exposes the sites, and the contraction occurs.
So if you are deficient in systemic calcium, your body physically cannot execute the movement at a cellular level.
Regardless of how much protein you eat or how much you try to exercise.
The engine is there, but the spark plugs are firing blanks.
Exactly. Dr. Reed's notes indicate that older adults with chronic calcium deficiencies face an exponentially higher risk of rapid muscle wasting simply because the muscles cannot adequately activate.
Wow. And returning to our 1 ounce piece of Parmesan, That tiny sliver delivers 331 milligrams of highly bioavailable calcium,
which is roughly 25% of an adult's entire daily requirement.
delivered simultaneously with the pre-digested protein needed to repair the fiber once the contraction is finished.
It is a complete physiological package in one bite.
That is so cool. So for you at home trying to implement this, Dr. Reed emphasizes checking the rind for the distinctive pin dot spelling of Parmigiano Reggiano.
Yes, pre-graded tubs lose the volatile compounds and structural integrity.
Right. Grating just 2 tablespoons fresh over a lunchtime salad is an economical, low-volume way to hit those density requirements. So cottage cheese covers the slow overnight fast. Parmesan provides the daytime density, but what happens when the muscle is actively stressed?
Like after exercise.
Yeah, say you just spent 45 minutes doing vigorous yard work or carrying heavy groceries. The muscle fibers are micro-torn. They don't have 6 hours to wait for casein to gel in the stomach.
No, they need an immediate biological response. The requirement shifts entirely to pharmacokinetics, the speed at which a nutrient can enter the peripheral circulation.
We need the fastest absorbing protein known to human digestion. Which brings us to our third cheese, ricotta.
Ricotta is fascinating.
I was initially caught off guard by this inclusion, honestly, because traditionally ricotta is made from whey, which is the watery liquid left over after the curds are separated to make other cheeses.
Right.
Calling a manufacturing byproduct a secret weapon for acute muscle repair feels kind of counterintuitive.
Well, it speaks to a historical misunderstanding of whey. That liquid byproduct happens to contain a uniquely structured set of proteins.
How so?
When you consume ricotta, the whey peptides do not coagulate in the stomach like casein. They remain soluble.
So they just pass right through.
Yep, passing rapidly into the small intestine where they are absorbed and synthesized into the bloodstream, often within 30 to 60 minutes.
But the speed is only half the equation here, right? Ricotta is aggressively dense in branched-chain amino acids, or BCAAs.
Yes, and the fascinating thing about BCAAs is how they route through the body's internal logistics system.
Because usually, when you eat almost any other nutrient, it is absorbed through the intestines and sent directly to the liver via the portal vein.
Right. The liver acts as a metabolic sorting facility, processing and often breaking down those nutrients before they ever reach the rest of the body. It performs what is known as splanchnic extraction.
But BCAAs are unique.
Very. The liver actually lacks the specific enzyme branched-chain aminotransferase required to break them down.
So it's an enzymatic loophole.
Basically, yeah. Because of this, BCAAs bypass hepatic metabolism entirely. They shoot straight past the liver and are delivered directly into the peripheral bloodstream, arriving at the muscle tissue intact and ready to immediately commence structural repair.
It's basically a biological fast-pass lane specifically designed for acute recovery.
Absolutely. And beyond the muscle repair, Dr. Reed's data highlights a secondary cardiovascular benefit.
Which is rare in discussions about cheese.
Very rare. Usually the conversation is dominated by warnings about sodium loading and hypertension, but ricotta actively subverts that narrative. First, the baseline sodium is remarkably low.
How low?
A half-cup serving contains roughly 100 milligrams of sodium. Compare that to upwards of 400 milligrams in processed or heavily aged alternatives.
That's a huge difference.
And second, the specific bioactive peptides found in whey protein act as natural ACE inhibitors.
Oh, similar to the mechanism of common blood pressure medications, like relaxing the blood vessels.
Precisely the same pathway. The whey peptides inhibit the angiotensin-converting enzyme, which actively helps to lower blood pressure.
So you are securing rapid muscle repair via the BCAAs while simultaneously supporting vascular health.
Exactly. And from a purely functional standpoint, the smooth, frictionless texture of whole milk ricotta makes it highly adaptable.
Yeah, you can blend it into a smoothie, mix it with cocoa powder, or just spread it on toast. It is incredibly versatile post-activity.
It really is.
Okay, so we now have our 3 clinical tools: the overnight slow burner, the daytime dense pack, and the post-activity rapid responder. But possessing the tools is meaningless without a deployment strategy.
Right. Dr. Reed's notes emphasize that erratic, unstructured protein consumption is just as detrimental as eating no protein at all.
The biochemistry we just discussed requires systemic timing. Dr. Reed identifies a pervasive behavioral flaw in how older adults consume food, which she categorizes as the light, heavy pattern.
Yeah, this is a huge problem. A piece of toast and coffee at breakfast, a small bowl of soup for lunch, and then a massive portion of chicken or beef at dinner.
He uses a fantastic analogy for this. He says trying to feed an aging muscle 60 grams of protein at dinner is like trying to hydrate a houseplant by dumping a 5-gallon bucket of water on it once a day.
It's a great visual.
Right. The soil can only absorb so much at one time. The rest just pools on the floor and damages the roots. The aging muscle operates on a very strict absorption threshold.
Yes. Skeletal muscle synthesis caps out at utilizing approximately 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal.
Wow, so if you consume 60 grams of protein at dinner.
The muscle machinery does not store the excess 30 grams in a biological reserve for tomorrow. The surplus is simply oxidized for energy or filtered out as nitrogenous waste by the kidneys.
So the heavy dinner is largely a metabolic waste of premium building materials.
Exactly.
And it makes that light breakfast incredibly destructive.
Yeah.
We know the body breaks down muscle overnight. You wake up in a catabolic or tissue-destroying state.
You need to flip the switch immediately to an anabolic tissue-building state.
But if you only eat 8 grams of protein through a piece of toast, you completely fail to hit the leucine threshold required to activate the mTOR pathway.
Your body just continues breaking down your muscles until dinner. Correcting this requires calculating a specific daily target and distributing it evenly.
And Dr. Reed provides a standard clinical formula for older adults, right? Body weight in kilograms multiplied by 1.2 grams of protein.
Yes, that's the baseline.
Let's run the math for the listener. If you weigh 150 pounds, you divide by 2.2 to get roughly 68 kilograms. Multiply 68 by 1.2, and your target is roughly 82 grams of high-quality protein every single day.
And to hit that optimally, Dr. Reed recommends integrating 2 to 3 servings of these specific cheeses across your daily meals.
So like a half cup of cottage cheese at breakfast.
Right, an ounce of Parmesan grated over your lunch.
And perhaps a serving of ricotta incorporated into a post-walk snack.
Exactly. You're delivering about 40 grams of highly bioavailable protein for only 300 to 400 total calories.
Ensuring the plant receives those steady, absorbable sips of water throughout the day.
Yes. But this raises an important question, though. We are outlining a very precise biochemical feeding schedule.
Right.
But if a patient diligently hits every mathematical target, eats all the correct cheeses, and then spends the next 12 hours sitting completely immobilized on a recliner, does the biochemistry still rebuild the muscle?
I'm guessing the clinical reality is no.
No, it doesn't. Nutrition is the raw material, but mechanical tension is the catalyst.
However, the threshold for that tension is incredibly low, right? We aren't talking about Olympic weightlifting here.
Not at all. The research specifically points to a synergistic effect. It's about lowering the anabolic resistance we talked about earlier.
So if you combine this exact protein protocol with just 10 minutes of light resistance training within a 2-hour window of eating, the results compound.
Yes. By light resistance, the clinical parameters literally mean standing up and sitting down from a dining chair 15 times, or performing a set of modified push-ups against the kitchen counter.
Oh, that's it.
That minimal mechanical stress acts as an amplifier, sensitizing the muscle fiber to the amino acids circulating in the blood. Studies utilizing this combination of light tension and timed dairy protein demonstrated a restoration of youthful muscle-building responses.
Even in older adults.
Even in cohorts where the average age was over 80.
That is amazing. 10 minutes of movement to wake the muscle up, followed by the specific fuel it needs to repair. It is a highly achievable protocol.
Absolutely.
But in the interest of being thorough with Dr. Reed's clinical notes, we must look at the safety parameters. Introducing concentrated dairy into an older adult's diet requires management, particularly regarding existing comorbidities.
Yes, any protocol with this much biological impact requires calibration. For individuals managing hypertension, sodium tracking is paramount.
Right, because while we established ricotta is exceptionally low in sodium, the curing process of Parmesan makes it naturally higher.
And commercial cottage cheese brands vary wildly. Scanning labels for low-sodium formulations is a non-negotiable step.
There is also a specific pharmacokinetic interaction noted regarding anticoagulants, like warfarin.
Yes. Parmesan and other aged cheeses contain vitamin K, which plays a direct role in blood clotting. The clinical guidance regarding vitamin K and warfarin is not abstinence, it is consistency.
Because warfarin dosage is calibrated based on your baseline diet.
Exactly. If you suddenly introduce large amounts of vitamin K, it can blunt the medication's efficacy. The key is to keep your daily intake highly stable so your physician can accurately titrate your prescription.
And finally, anyone with chronic kidney disease or a heavily reduced glomerular filtration rate must consult their nephrologist before increasing protein intake.
Because compromised kidneys really struggle to clear the urea generated by protein metabolism.
Okay, so safety protocols secure the foundation. So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, Dr. Reed distills 3 decades of clinical observation into a highly practical 90-day challenge.
Right. Step 1. Do the math. Calculate your 1.2 gram daily protein target based on your weight. Step 2. Stock the tools. Procure the cottage cheese for the morning, the authentic Parmigiano Reggiano for daytime density, and the whole milk ricotta for post-activity repair.
And step 3. Commit to just 10 minutes of mechanical tension chair squats or wall push-ups to sensitize the tissue.
And step 4 is documentation. Keep a brief daily journal for those 90 days.
Because that is the clinically observed window required for the structural changes in the muscle fibers to manifest as noticeable improvements in functional tasks.
Like climbing stairs without pausing or unscrewing a tight jar lid, it shifts the concept of aging from an inevitable decline to a manageable structural repair project.
It really does empower people.
It really does. I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder as you look at your kitchen this week. Think back to that 24-month aging process of the Parmesan wheel. We spent the last few decades aggressively looking for high-tech, artificial supplements, synthetic powders, and lab-created solutions to preserve our youth and our strength.
Oh, absolutely.
But the perfect pre-digested protein solution, utilizing advanced enzymatic breakdown to bypass a failing digestive system, was actually engineered centuries ago by traditional cheesemakers. If the natural enzymes in an ancient wheel of cheese can perfectly disassemble proteins to save our aging muscles, what other brilliant symbiotic relationships are hiding in our traditional ancient foods, just waiting for modern science to finally rediscover them?
The laboratories of the future might just be the cellars of the past.
I love that. Until next time, keep exploring and start looking at your grocery list as a blueprint for longevity.